A lot of people in leadership roles in the insurance spaces tend to be promoted salespeople. They don't always make the best, most effective leaders because you sort of get that whole great soccer players don't make great managers. If you've got a good boss, you'll listen. If you got a mediocre boss, maybe you listen. But if you can have your colleagues telling you something works, that echoes louder. The best way to handle leadership buy-in in a change management process has been to give them a voice in the process. I think tools like AI, they could never replace, in my opinion, the human element, right? What they allow my leaders to do is to scale their efforts.
How do you go about, first and foremost, getting engagement from your seasoned reps that they think they're already there, they arrived, there's no room for improvement, and also kind of like shortening this gap between low performers and high performers? Hey, Bryan, how's it going, my friend?
Michael, it's going great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, my pleasure. Again, you're very special. You're the first guest from insurance guest on the podcast. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. Obviously, the goal is to discuss some of the challenges that you've seen in the market this year and how to be prepared for next year with better leadership and also leveraging AI tools that can potentially help our team do their job better. Before we get started, we want to get to know you a little bit more. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're working on these days?
Yeah, so I appreciate it. And again, I'm honored to be the first insurance person, hopefully not the last. I am the director of operations for one of the largest captive insurance agencies in the country by sales volume. I have been with this organization since 2005, so I've sort of grown up here, kind of cut my teeth here, advanced along the way, made a lot of mistakes, lost my hair, unfortunately. I have a BA in organizational leadership for Arizona State University, so kind of leadership is sort of near and dear to my heart. It's something that I take really seriously, kind of try to be a student of it and all of the different like approaches to how we can get the most out of the people that we work alongside of. It's something that I feel very, very strongly about. And yeah, that more or less is about me. Right now, we are spending a lot of time kind of rethinking what it is we're doing as insurance agents and how we can be competitive in a landscape that changes so rapidly now. It's hard to believe it's the same thing it was even 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and I think it's just the pace of change is getting faster and faster. As weeks go by, so it's an exciting / scary time, if I'm being honest.
I would say, look, that's for everyone, like regardless of your industry or vertical you're in. With massive changes we see with AI, everybody's like thinking, what's next? What is it that we're not seeing yet that we might actually notice in upcoming years? But I want to talk about problems that you noticed this year and what's really changed even compared to last year.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think first and foremost, in the lead generation space, there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of the year with one-to-one consent rules with the FCC. There was this big push, this big effort to get like lead generation companies, lead aggregators, insurance agencies, insurance companies, all kind of aligned with this consent model. And then at literally, I should say literally the 11th hour, it was at 4:30 p.m. the Friday before it was supposed to go in force on a Monday. So like 4:30 p.m. the case was stayed and partially tossed, if I'm not mistaken. So all of that hard work, all of that effort kind of got chucked out the window, but it sort of laid bare this new paradigm in the lead space is in that technology and the way the purchasing public interacts with a company like mine and with larger companies and with lead companies, it changes so rapidly. And there are so many more rules and regulations surrounding how a company like mine can get in touch with a prospect to offer them a solution and hopefully, get them on board and in our ecosystem, that it sort of made everything a little bit slower, a little bit more expensive, a little bit more competitive, a little bit more opaque. And it took us a while to kind of, figure out the new lay of the land. And I would say it's never really gotten back to what it was a year ago, right? 2025 has been really, really variable in terms of how that's gone. And I think that kind of feeds into my second thing that I've noticed, which is that the pace at which technology impacts what we do has rapidly changed. So something as simple as being labeled as spam when you're making an outbound call, for example. the algorithms and the technologies that wireless carriers, for example, use to determine whether or not somebody is a spam caller have gotten so quick that it changes more rapidly than any of the mitigation strategies or any of the prevention strategies that we have can keep up. So it's sort of this. I used to call it kind of like whack-a-mole, in that you'd spot a problem, you'd solve it, and then another would pop up. It's sort of like that, only at like 3 times speed now. And as we kind of look to the future, I think the name of the game is trying to leverage technology to help you stay ahead of the challenges you get in contacting people, but also generating opportunities to sell to the general public. I think technology has to be front and center, and organizations like ours that are forward thinking will have a leg up because they'll be kind of on the bleeding edge of what's new. And organizations that unfortunately maybe don't adapt or maybe stuck in older paradigms are really going to struggle in this space because they're always going to be multiple steps behind, and every step you fall behind, it takes times two effort to catch up. So yeah, I think those are the two changes from last year to this year that have really stood out to me.
Interesting. Look, you mentioned about, again, cost of leads going up because of all the challenges they face actually generating the leads, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, with all the regulations and being tagged as spam, what it tells me is that like we need to maximize our conversations. So it means when we have an opportunity, we need to make sure that we deliver the best experience to our prospects and clients, so they feel that, all right, this is a right decision to stay with Bryan's office moving forward because these guys care about us. So
Yeah.
I wanted to hear from your perspective, what should we do to be prepared for next year when things most likely not going to get cheaper or easier? So,
Probably not, right? um, yeah, I think that you said something really interesting there that really resonated, and I want to kind of call back to is that we have to be a lot more efficient in our interactions, and I think that has to do with whether or not you're trying to acquire, a new client or retain one. I think that the days where you could just kind of throw money at a problem or throw bodies at a problem are long gone, right? It's not about how much you can spend, but when you have these opportunities to interact with somebody, are you following a consistent, repeatable process? Are you focusing on that process? Are you training on that process? Are you taking the time to think about how your prospects communicate, how your clients communicate, what their preferred communication style is? Are you able to train and develop your team to sort of adapt to that and sort of up and down shift through different communication styles so that you're connecting with people on a level where it's, the bottom line price is always going to matter, but, are we able to identify those people that are purchasing a relationship and not just a piece of paper? Are we able to, communicate effectively with those people who are very direct and to the point? Well, are our people that are a little bit more relationship focused as staff people, are they able to sort of adapt their communication style to this? So I think it ultimately comes down to, how do we get more efficient in these spaces? I think it's training. I think it's development. I think it's by developing, maintaining, sharpening, and improving the processes that we have internally in our organizations to leverage better results. Because maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, let's just say if you had 10 opportunities, you could get away with maybe maximizing 4 of them. Nowadays you might only get 5, and that same ratio is not going to lead to success. You've got to make more out of less, and that starts with training.
Interesting. Look, I completely agree with you. Like when when we face problems, we can simply say, hey, we have people problem. Our people are not doing the best job, right? But you said it, like process is the biggest issue, because if you don't have a process that is changing based on what's happening in the market, how do you want to build that repeatability that people is just part of it? How to assess our efficacy of these conversations? How do we be efficient in terms of like when to even reach out to people, what to tell them, how to handle different situations? It all comes boils down to your process that you build. Again, if you're a player in the space, you need that process nailed. Now, you mentioned at the end, you finish your sentence with, we need training. Historically, at least in the insurance space, like when we talk to a lot of pros, the problem has been always around, look, I have a number of seasoned reps. They're not open to even change. You say training, they're going to say, leave me alone. Let me go do my calls.
Yeah.
Because with more volume, I'm most probably going to send out more quota and, close more, deals. also you have this big gap between your high performing agents and low performers, and that role of 80/20 kind of like applies to almost everyone we spoke with. So I wanted to get your perspective. How do you go about first and foremost getting engagement from your seasoned reps that they think they're already there, they arrived, there's no room for improvement, and also kind of like shortening this ramp, this gap between low performers and high performers?
So I think that from my perspective as a leader, it actually starts with the behaviors that you model, right? And this is something that I've seen a lot over the years, is that there are agency owners or professionals like myself in sort of leadership and management and operations type roles that sort of think they've got it figured out, and they want everybody to sort of adhere to a specific paradigm. And I think that's a real critical error that we make in this space. You know, I think it starts first and foremost with admitting that there's no one right answer. And what looks right for rep A is maybe going to look a little bit differently for rep B and rep C. So as a leader, I think it starts by admitting that where rep A is and where rep B is and where rep C is maybe very, very different things. And that's a bit of an ego check for a leader, because I think there's this tendency of people in leadership role. Well, two things, I guess, in my space. And I know I'm giving you a very 10,000 foot answer here, but I promise I'll zoom in. A lot of people in leadership roles in the insurance space, especially in insurance agent space, tend to be promoted salespeople. They don't always make the best, most effective leaders, because you sort of get that whole great soccer players don't make great, you know, managers, right? Great football players
Mm,
don't make great football coaches, right? Great singers don't necessarily make great vocal coaches, because how can you coach these people to do what you do instinctively, naturally, right? I myself, I would consider myself a average salesperson, maybe. I mean, the only reason I'm any good at it is probably because of years and years of experience and trial and error, but also I'm smart enough to know that I'm not very good at it. So I've got to got to work on it. I've got to keep my craft
mhm,
sharp. So I think from a leadership standpoint, it starts with admitting that there's no one right way to do it. You have to beg, borrow, and steal ideas. You've got to be okay taking a concept or a talk path or a way to frame an idea and using it and putting it in your own words, and modeling that behavior with your team, right? You've got to be very
mhm,
emotionally mature and possess a high degree of sort of comfort in, again, communicating in different styles with different people. In terms of how that then translates to the reps, if you've got your real top performers, your people that are, top of the board all the time, you can almost write them in pen for a specific number. I think it starts with, from a cultural standpoint in your organization, you have to set the expectation that culture, like training and development, is part of what we do here. We are always going to strive to get better, or at the very worst, stay sharp. And I think if I look at my own organization, I've got some of the best people in our industry. I would take them against any other team, bar none. And I think the thing that sets them apart is even our top performers want something that they can get better at. And we can identify with some of the tools that we have at our disposal, some of the technology that we use. These are specific areas where you're maybe lagging behind in other areas, right? And if you can kind of marry that sort of objective, measurable, hey, you're 47% here, which lags, significantly behind your other areas. Let's focus on this particular part of your sales process, right? We strip it down, we take outcome out of it, because, I'm a big believer in process over outcome. If you've got a consistent, repeatable, strong process, you're going to succeed on a long enough timeline. It doesn't matter if you make the sale or not. If your process is sound, the results will come. So if we can strip it down and just kind of work on that skill, we can see growth in that space. And actually, anecdotally, we saw it this past production month. My number one performer set an organizational record, because in part we were able to identify this one broken in her process by using technology, by providing an objective, and then providing solutions that fit her. Not one size fits all kind of boilerplate. Oh, you just gotta ask for the sale. Okay, well, what does that mean? How do we execute it, right? We
mm,
actually took the time to show her how to execute it, which is, I think, another area where organizations like mine struggle, right? So top performers, you've got to break it down, and you got to show them the specific areas where they can maybe, get a little bit of a leg up. For kind of our middle and lower end performers, how do we work on kind of bridging the divide between the top and the bottom, or the top and the middle? I think it's simple. It's a commitment to that training and development. It's not terribly different from helping the top performer.
Mhm.
It might be a little bit more widespread. It might be a little bit more frequent. They might have two areas they have to work in, or their baselines are lower. So in that event, we set really specific measurable targets, and we really only try to focus on working on one thing at a time. Because if you throw too much, it's just noise. The signal gets lost, right? So we focus on leveling up one skill at a time. We track it over a period of time. We celebrate the success, which is very, very important. And once we feel comfortable that they've leveled up, then we move on to the next thing and the next thing. And eventually, with enough graft and effort and, putting in the hard yards, we're able to kind of take that person from being, let's say, lower end to middle end. Well, you might say, well, why didn't you take them from lower to top? Well,
Mhm.
that's a success too. If we have to celebrate any progress. If I can take somebody that sells 40 policies in a month and move them up to 50, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if my math is correct, that is a 20%, 25% increase, right? In their production. That's meaningful, and that makes a big difference. And if you can repeat that amongst a staff of 20, 30, 40, you're talking a really significant improvement to your revenue, your bottom line. Everybody's happier, everybody's winning, everybody's making a good amount of money. It's a much better environment to be part of. So it's the secret sauce is that there's no secret sauce, I suppose. It's just a real commitment to training and development, objectively measuring and identifying areas of improvement and measuring where we want to go, and providing solutions on how to execute how we want to get there.
It's all about the mindset, and you said it. You said, look, you need to have the culture as an office, as a business, as leaders, that learning and development is part of it. It's not a quick fix, an event that we
Yep.
bring someone over, they train you on something for 2 days, and
Yep.
then everybody claps, everyone's a superstar, and nobody
Yeah.
applies. And it's a journey. And as long as, again, you are part of this organization, we will help you. And what I really love about what you said, why do we have even like this one size fit all practices? Because we don't even have insights around like who we are working with. When we say high performing reps, we only look at CRM data, right? We don't know why they are high performing,
Right.
which areas of improvement to focus on. And that's why they always give you pushback. I'm doing my job. But as good leaders, if we have insight, if we know our seller personas and their vision of success, then I would say we have a better shot of getting buy-in from them, whether it's a tool, whether it's a training material, process, it doesn't matter. They will support the cause because it's about them.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask a follow-up question on this. Can you remember a story that you can share? I don't want to overstep, that you roll out something new, you got some pushback from your high performing reps, and how you actually handle that situation.
I mean, it might be challenging to limit it to just one, right? I mean, I think there's always, like, to your point. I mean, I think that anybody who's been in this space long enough has been to one of these seminars, or they've seen the new hot training tool, or this new like iteration of the same thing just dressed up in a different package. And again, it just sort of ends up being like we're checking a box to check a box, right? We use a wonderful tool called SellMeThisPen.ai. I'm not sure who developed it, and no. So we what we did is we wanted to identify a way for us to your point, sell people the benefit on training and development, because you think about the best way to get buy-in is to convince somebody that there's a benefit to them for doing so, and everybody's kind of benefit, everybody's buy-in threshold's a little bit different. And I think when we rolled this tool out, there was a little bit of resistance to the idea of, for example, role play. Nobody likes role playing. Everybody hates role playing. It's sort of like the training and development equivalent of eating your vegetables, right? But and you never want to use parent logic, right? Because I said so, because that's really not a great way from a leadership standpoint to get buy-in. Instead, it's a very patient process, right? Like, we're going to say, hey, this is something that we're going to try out. This is why we're going to try it out. And this is what we think it's going to do for you. And we're going to roll out benefit A, B, C, and D to these folks. So rep A, if I could tell you that I could help you increase your closing rate by 2%, 3%, that would mean an extra $6,000 in your pocket at the end of the month. Would you like $6,000? Well, who's going to say no, right? Not very many people. So at least it gets their attention. And then we can show them through this tool, like, hey, if we do these exercises, we can track your progress. And if we kind of score your calls and your real calls, not just the role playing exercise, but we can score these calls and we can show your progress and track it over a long enough period of time. I guarantee you, if you put the effort in, it's going to do this, right? And there was skepticism, we'll see, ha ha ha, whatever. Over time, we saw the people that didn't really take it seriously, they sort of didn't move the needle a lot. The people that did take it seriously, though, and there were about 5 or 6 in our organization, and I would say none of them were high performers either. Like they were kind of mid range, maybe, middle class or upper lower class performers. Mix my metaphors, right? These people, these folks who bought in and really didn't just take the time to check a box, but really looked at it as an opportunity to hold a mirror up to their performance and say, okay, what am I doing really well, and what can I level up on? These are the folks that saw increases in their closing rates 3, 4, 5%. It took their, one case we had somebody double their production,
Oh.
and I mean, aside from it proving its viability to our top performers, who then, obviously they see that, they want that same thing. My top performer, her closing rate went up 9%. This
Wow.
past month after spending a little extra time in the tool. Yeah, it's a great tool. I'd recommend you reach out to the developers. It's great stuff. But when you see that kind of increase and improvement in people's skill set, it kind of creates this positive momentum in an organization where other people want to find out what you're doing, because to your point, people talk, right? Their colleagues, they share best practices. In a good organization, they share tips and they share tricks and they share talk paths. It's not like crabs in a bucket where people are trying to pull them down, right? That's one of the things we believe in. And I think any successful culture is one where people try to lift each other up. So they talk. Well, how did you get better? Well, I spent a lot of time working on this and we focused on this and I did this. And all of a sudden that creates this positive energy where people want to buy in, right? So it's sort of like we had the Prove It crew that saw in themselves an area they wanted to get better, saw the potential benefit, took the time to do it, saw the benefit both in terms of our KPI, but also their pocketbooks.
Yep.
Now everybody wants part of that.
Mm-hmm. So you built your case again, your champions internally.
Yeah.
Peers started talking to their peers.
Yeah.
So it's easier even to be hands off at that point. So you just need to have the proof point ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot better than me telling him to do it, because look, everybody's boss tells them to do stuff, right? And if you got a good boss, you'll listen. If you got a mediocre boss, maybe you listen. If you got a terrible one, you're going to pay lip service to it. But if you can have your colleagues telling you something works, I think that echoes louder. That matters more.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With SellMeThisPen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at SellMeThisPen.ai.
Let's talk about right now leadership teams. Because yes, with the end user, with your LSPs or service, agents and all that, to your point, there are multiple ways we can roll this out. Starting with, communicating this culture, why we are rolling this out. What does this mean to you? Get some champions, again, up and coming reps, to build a voice internally.
Yep.
Let's talk about like leadership. What are some of the, resistance or challenges that you've noticed when you bring this change management and you introduce it to people who used to do their work, kind of like in certain ways, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I think that not to kind of beat this drum more, but it starts with a culture of an organization, right? If your culture is one that embraces learning and development, it embraces thinking outside of the box a little bit, or kind of not being afraid to make mistakes, it's a lot easier to get leadership buy-in. But I think in our experience, the best way to handle leadership buy-in in a change management process has been to give them a voice in the process. Have it not necessarily be top down, sort of dictatorial, but be a collaborative process where everyone feels heard and seen, and everyone feels like they've had a hand in crafting how this is going to be rolled out, implemented. It sounds reductive to say they've got a skin in the game at that point, but it can sometimes, I like to think of it as people want to feel appreciated. People want to people want to feel like they're heard. And I think that's true even for, like, I guess you'd call them middle managers, right? A lot of organizations are just kind of tasked with the dirty work, right? Like somebody like me tells them we're not selling very well, and then somebody like them goes and beats up the team for 15 minutes on a Zoom call, and then it's like, okay, go get them, and it's like, that's not particularly effective. You know, I'd want my leaders, my management team, in there with me, talking about what works, talking about what doesn't, being right there with their teams as well, trying to make something better, right? I always tell the team, even in my role today, like I would not ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. Whether or not that's, try a new product, do a particular role play, work on a skill, admit that I'm wrong, be okay with making a mistake and failing. And I think that setting that tone helps, right? But I think it's, at the end of the day, it's all about giving your team a voice in the process, giving them ownership in it. And I think by doing that, then it's not, well, Bryan says we have to do this, so we're doing this. Hey, this is something we are doing because we think this is going to be successful for us.
I love that. Like, especially in like this day and age with AI transformation, taking over, I think having this mindset to, get your frontline leaders involved from day one, and you guys did a phenomenal job. Like, I think I met your frontline leaders more than we met, in the past couple of months. And this is amazing because they see things that we might not actually see because they're in the front lines.
Yeah.
And we give them this opportunity to be more strategic and not being scared of this change, so-called AI. Because I remember early on, mostly frontline leaders were extremely, afraid of, not your leaders, I'm talking, the whole, space as a whole, about being replaced. Okay, if you role play, if you do coaching, if you have insight around, what I do, if you can hold them accountable, then what's my role? I want to talk about this. What's their role?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Here's this is my soapbox, right? I think tools like AI and some of the things that a lot of organizations are kind of starting to bring to the forefront, certainly us, they could never replace, in my opinion, the human element, right? What they allow my leaders to do is to scale their efforts, right? We've got a pretty large organization. We've got 45 plus people in it, right? And, across 4 managers, that's a lot of headcount. That's a lot of different areas of responsibility to be mindful of. And I think with how challenging our marketplace is, there's a big premium put on, training development, professional development, upskilling, things like that. And I don't think we would be as able to be as effective as we are without using these tools to multiply our time, right? Instead of being able to maybe do one role play a week, now the rep can do a couple, and then we can do one, and then we can see them. Or instead of listening to 500 phone calls by a rep in a week, we can look at scoring averages, and we can look at trends. And I think it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just knowing what it is and what it isn't. What it isn't is a replacement for a manager. What it is a way to make a manager, make a leader much more effective, much more knowledgeable of what's going on. Like the days where a person like me could know everything that's going on in their organization and know exactly what to do for each individual person, those are long gone if they ever even existed. I think honestly, anybody in my spot 5 years ago that told themselves that they knew what all 45 people were good at was probably either kidding themselves or had a very superficial understanding, honestly. So by using these tools, we make ourselves more effective. We can intervene earlier. We can provide unique, bespoke training and development for people, because what person A is different from person B. They have different intrinsic needs, strengths, weaknesses, areas of opportunity to level up and upskill. And we use these things to make ourselves better leaders. We don't use these things to replace ourselves as leaders. I think that's an important, critical distinction. And we're lucky enough to not have anybody feel like any of these tools are out to replace them. They never could. And I would never want that. But they all use them the right way. It's sort of like you use a hammer as a hammer and a screwdriver as a screwdriver. You don't use a hammer like a saw, right? And you just have to know what tools are and how to get the most mileage out of them. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds as sort of, AI and some of the other technology related tools enter more of a mainstream in the workplace, even for like mid-sized and smaller organizations, right? How people choose to use them is going to be very telling.
That's absolutely correct. And look, we are at its infancy. Like, I know a lot of people say how powerful it is. It's amazing, but I think things will massively change in 2026. We're not looking at it 5 years ahead. And look what happened since last year. Many things are transformed. Like, it's beyond just a simple change. And I'm really excited personally to see, what could this bring to insurance space, because I think insurance is very underserved. And most tooling I'm looking at right now is just really legacy. Like, it's built to get one certain thing done rather than being more strategic and looking at our even go-to-market as a whole. How should we even differentiate ourselves in a space that is growing in terms of competition? Cost of acquisition is going high.
Yeah.
And I think, again, tools like this could potentially help solving some of those challenges. My last question before we go for some rapid fire questions, Bryan. Can you tell us an unexpected insight or a funny story engaging with tools like SellMeThisPen or any other AI tools, in fact, that you and the team actually noticed?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys meant this, but you guys designed the first one you designed for us was an AI named James, and James is everybody in our organization knows James. He's let's just say cantankerous, and I don't know if you designed him this way, but we just sort of assumed that maybe you programmed him to train the fight or flight response, because it seemed to really, he was very rude, right? And if you're listening to this, if you're in the insurance space, I'm confident you've talked to a James or have a James in your book of business, and or several. And when our team ran through it, it was sort of like this, like getting cold water thrown in your face. Like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is horrible. This guy's awful. Why would I don't want to talk to these folks in real life. Why would I talk to them? Why would I talk to robot rudeness?
Yeah.
Right. But it's interesting because I think that whether or not it was your intention, like the idea of, hey guys, think about it as a way to train your fight or flight, right? Sort of like inoculate yourself against these folks who you speak with, who are rude, abrasive, belligerent, combative, don't give you the kind of answers you want to questions. That actually makes us better, because when we run into it in the real world, we've got a little bit of a callus built up, right? We've got a little bit of oh, okay, it's just James, and now we can handle it from there. So that's my funny story. You guys built a fight or flight training module, even if you didn't mean it. So
Everybody loves and hates James at the same time.
Yep.
But look, to your point, it's a safe space to make mistakes. And when you face this in real life, you don't feel like you're inside the ring and you think or you feel that you're ready and get punched in the face, and then you have to figure this out, on the fly, because you already practice, you build that muscle memory. Be glad that James again served you guys well.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Bryan, we're going to get into some quick rapid fire questions. Operations leaders will be more effective if they only
admit that they don't know everything and ask more questions than they try to deliver answers.
Love it. Instead of sell me this pen, sell me this
pencil. Sell me this policy. Sell me this policy. You don't even have to change the acronym.
I love that. How your career impacted your personal development?
Well, I think just sort of understanding how to communicate with different kinds of people, understanding different perspectives, different points of view, different worldviews. I mean, I can't think of a way it hasn't, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Our next guest is Martin Amador. He's another agency owner from Colorado.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for him?
I would be curious as to if his implementation of some of these technology tools differs from ours, and if so, how. I think that, I said this earlier, but being able to beg, borrow, and steal ideas is sort of like a central tenet of education and training. And I think that no one ever has a monopoly on good ideas. So if he's doing something a little bit different, boy, I'd love to know it and absolutely steal that idea.
Amazing. Bryan, really do appreciate you. If someone wants to reach out to you or have a conversation with you, can they and how?
Yeah, the best way to reach out would be to give our office a call or email us at info@ltagencygroup.com. And I believe our number these days is area code 847-362-0099.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Great having you, Bryan. Appreciate the conversation. Guys, hope you enjoyed as well. And until next time, bye for now.